Hey, friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while since we've looked at your hot takes with WrestleMania right around the corner. We're going to do exactly that because you guys got a bunch of them. Let's go ahead and dive into this one. It's not a WrestleMania related one, but I thought it was a pretty decent one anyways. Jalen LeGrant here says, Ruthless aggression was better than the Attitude Era. Better, obviously, is a subjective thing. But it's not like Jalen here is saying that the Ruthless aggression, the PG era was better than the Attitude Era, or the PG era was better than the Ruthless aggression era. I've actually seen this take quite a bit. I think some of it depends on when you grew up. If you grew up and you remember fondly when you first started watching wrestling, the likes of Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Randy Orton, Batista, Evolution, all them, if that's what you recall, if that's like your formative years of wrestling, you're probably going to be more into the Ruthless aggression era than the Attitude Era. Similarly, like me, when I first started watching wrestling, it wasn't until college. Attitude Era is what I was sort of introduced to regular weekly WWF programming, as opposed to like I wasn't a little kid watching the Hulkamaniac stuff. And so to me, Attitude Era was like prime wrestling. I thought that was the thing right there. And once they got to Ruthless aggression, it was like, I'm watching, but I'm not like so into it. Looking back now from 2024 through, my eyes, obviously there's a couple things that the Ruthless aggression era has over the Attitude Era. Number one, the in-ring product, the actual wrestling. In my opinion, Ruthless aggression has that on lock compared to the Attitude Era. The Attitude Era wrestling, of course, is like between 97 and 2001, for the majority of those years, I think up until 99, 2000, whatever it was, 99, was Vince Russo was like one of the lead writers there, telling Vince, hey, bro, all we need are these 2-minute matches or 4-minute matches, and then doing a bunch of crazy shit backstage. Whereas in the Ruthless aggression era, things, they took a lot more time to breathe. You had like Shawn Michaels' incredible run after he came back from his injury, and you just have some absolutely classic matches. Ric Flair's last run in WWF was during that time. Kurt Angle was tearing it up. A lot of just really amazing matches during the Ruthless aggression era. So you do have that on lock. You've got, of course, the Ruthless aggression era. I'm having a hard time saying it. You also have Triple H's Reign of Terror, which not so great, but at the same time, you also had, for example, the brand split. So you had the SmackDown 6 going on there. Just a lot of really cool shit going on in the Ruthless aggression era. Also a lot of dog shit in the Ruthless aggression era. I've never said Ruthless aggression so many times in one segment in my life. Anyways, to me, the thing that the Attitude Era had over the RA era, for me personally, and again, this is probably a nostalgia thing, but it was, I just appreciate the characters more in the Attitude Era than in the Ruthless aggression era. To me, Stone Cold was the guy. Triple H was the guy. Undertaker, I was never a huge fan of, but I appreciated when they were doing the ministry stuff. Mankind at the time, DX, all those guys, that was the shit. And then also to be going up against Prime WCW at the same time, there was something special about that period. When I think of the Ruthless aggression era, some of it, I know that era was supposed to start in 2002 with that one episode where Vince McMahon said Ruthless aggression. But if you take sort of to me personally, the Attitude Era died when Vince McMahon bought WCW and he did that thing. Look what I've got in my hands, WCW. And so the Invasion Era to me always felt more like that's when things changed because they could sort of stop caring. And I'll be honest with you, with the Invasion angle, it kind of seemed like they didn't care. We bought WCW and nobody's going to challenge us. So sure, let's bring out a bunch of the natural born thrillers as opposed to plunk down the money to try to get guys like Goldberg and Flair and Sting, although Sting didn't want to sign. So, I don't know. The thing that Attitude Era had really, really going for it, in my opinion, was just that sense of urgency, man. Everything really mattered. And maybe it was because you had technically less amount of programming. You just had, for a chunk of time anyways, up until 99, for those first 2 years of the Attitude Era, you had 2 hours of TV. You had Monday Night Raw, and that's it. That's all you had. And then they bring in SmackDown, and it was like, oh man, so many cool things happen on Raw. Let's also watch SmackDown. There's a bunch of cool stuff happening there as well, up until the brand split where there was just too many wrestlers, too much stuff going on, and Vince really couldn't handle it. Also, half of them, more than half of them, like 80% of the wrestlers and the stories were just super half-baked. So, I don't know. That was my take on it. But when you match up, like, what are the classic matches in the Ruthless Aggression era versus the classic match of the Attitude Era, I kind of feel like Ruthless Aggression has it beat. So, in one way, in a couple ways, I think you're right here, Jalen. But I'll always be a fan of the sense of urgency. And I don't know, there's something about, man, I always say this. It's kind of like music. And to a degree, movies. Whenever you look at artists, when they're doing their work that's most vital, that's most memorable, I'll give you an example. Pearl Jam, right? Their first album, 10, you could tell those dudes, they were hungry. Like probably literally hungry because they really didn't have that much money. As soon as 10 hit big and they got that money, all the rest of their albums kind of just weren't as good. You can make the case that, the first couple albums after 10, Versus and Vitalogy and, whatever, were like, okay, they were good. There's some good stuff on them, sure, but nothing beats listening to a bunch of dudes in Seattle who are just starving. Like, man, where are we going to eat tonight? I don't know. More ramen? Probably. And that's what the Attitude Era was. McMahon was hungry. He was like, we're coming off this dog shit new era where, like, no, we didn't make any new stars at all. Like, we're cold as cold can be. And meanwhile, WCW's digging up, the remains of Hulk Hogan. And he's like making something fresh out of him with the NWO. We're hungry. We're hungry. We need to cook something. They cooked the Attitude Era. That to me, it's something that's not tangible. It's something that's not tangible. But, Ruthless Aggression Era, they weren't hungry anymore. So in my opinion, it goes to the Attitude Era. But this is a case could be made for Ruthless Aggression. Absolutely. Art Fracture here has a wildly, it's a lot of upvoted. Art Fracture here has a take that has got a lot of the thumbs up, a lot of upvotes. Says Timeless Tony Storm is the most NXT 2.0 gimmick, and it rules above everything in AEW because of it. This is an interesting take. I'm not sure exactly how to wrap my head around it because it's Sunday when I'm doing this, and I'm a little bit groggy because I took a nap. But is it a very NXT 2.0 gimmick? Yeah, I don't know. It's an incredibly unique one. I don't even know that I'd say, I guess, yeah, like if I were to think, okay, where did they come up with this? If somebody just presented to me Tony Storm without any of the like company branding and say, hey, Steve, take a guess, where was this done? Was it 2.0? Yeah, I'd probably say NXT 2.0. That's actually a pretty good point now that I think about it. And it rules above everything in AEW because of it. It's very unique. And it's one of my favorite deals right now in wrestling. So, yeah, if you think it's very 2.0 and that's why it rules above everything, that's great. I still don't watch NXT because of that dog shit venue they got. It makes it look like it's Nickelodeon. I can't stand it. All right, here's a hot take this is going to be a tricky one. Strange Will 97 says WWE and AEW's women's divisions are literally booked the same. Surface level stories with 2 women's segment matches per show if you're lucky. AEW just gets more heat for it. Ooh-wee. Ooh, this is a hot one. This is a hot one right here. All right, so let's break this down. I've seen this take out there before. I've seen this argument out there before. And to be honest with you, it's kind of hard to quantify. What does that mean? If you stack up the number of featured women that are, of women that are featured on AEW programming across their 5 hours of cable television versus the women that are featured in WWE across their 7 hours of featured content on TV. If you include, I'll put it this way, if you include NXT in that, then you have no case whatsoever at all. NXT features their women prominently, super prominently. Let's just take that out for a second, okay? Let's just give that to the AEW side of things, okay? Because NXT is not main roster television, okay? Because then you'd have to look at like Ring of Honor for that because that's their NXT. So you take NXT out of it, you take Ring of Honor out of it, okay? So you're just left with, 5 hours on either side. 5 hours of AEW, 5 hours of WWE. Now, I have seen metrics before to suggest that the sheer number of minutes, the actual time devoted to the women in AEW is equal to that of WWE, that it's actually the same. And so people shouldn't really crow about the use of women in AEW as it relates to the use of women in WWE. If you look at the number of women featured on either program right now on television on a regular basis, I wrote them down. They're under this hoodie of mine right here. It's not that different. It's not that different. AEW, they got Statlander, Willow, Monet, Tony, Perazzo, Thunder Rosa, Mariah May, Julia Hart, Sky Blue, Saraya. I put Saraya and Ruby Soho down here, but they haven't had a match in like forever. But they do segments on Rampage where they're trying to I don't know, Saraya and Harley, I think, are undermining Ruby in her relationship or something like that. I guess. I don't watch Rampage. I don't really know. I keep up with it to a degree. So it's that's if you include Saraya and Ruby, who really don't have matches. Otherwise, over on WWE side, you got Rhea, Liv, Becky Bayley, Asuka, Kairi, Dakota Kai, Io, Candice LeRae, who's now on a story. She's got a story going on where she's turning back. Indy Hartwell, Tiffany Stratton, Naomi, and Bianca. Who am I leaving out here? Am I leaving anybody? I'm not really leaving anybody out here. That's just sort of off the top of my head writing these down. Everybody here is in matches, though. And then over on the AEW side, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 9. So it's 9 versus 13? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 13. So there are more women featured in matches and stuff on WWE programming. There's, in my opinion, there's more sort of jobber matches in AEW on their programming. I can't speak to the length of match time. I can't speak to that because I'm not going to sit here and measure that stuff out for the sake of this take right here. And then it all boils down to, but let's say things are relatively equal, okay? Let's say things are relatively equal in terms of amount of time and then the number of people that are featured, okay? Even if I grant you that, at that point it becomes subjective. Can't even say the word. Subjective, right? Strange Will here says they both get surface level stories. This is where I differ in a major way when it comes from WWE to AEW. And again, this is my opinion. I think you can only really you can't quantify how in-depth a story goes. You could write an essay where you do that, you break it down, and maybe that would be the way to go, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say, if you love what they're doing with Toni Storm, Deonna Purrazzo, and now bringing in Thunder Rosa, you got the Mariah May stuff. If you really, really love that and you're really engrossed in that, who am I to say that isn't as sort of deep a story or complex a story as what they're doing with Naomi and Bianca and Damage Control, which I personally think is much more complex than anything that got going on over in AEW. That's my personal opinion, because you've got Naomi, who's been gone, and she's coming to Bayley's back because she knows what it's like to have her faction turn on her in the past, but she wasn't around for Bayley being a dick with Damage Control. And Bianca's like, hey, Naomi, why are you doing this? They were jerks around her. You weren't here. And Naomi's like, look, you all do me. Okay. I'm just doing what I think is right. So she goes out there to try to help. And then Bianca goes out to try to help, but Naomi gets misted. And then you got this whole thing set up where it's oh man, to me, that's more complex than what they got going over at AEW. And that's, that's not to say anything about the talent over there at AEW. It's not their fault. That's creatively what they've been given. But from my point of view, that's a deeper thing. Rhea Ripley has been one of the main characters of Monday Night Raw now for a year at least. She is one of their top draws, man, woman, whatever. AEW can't really say that. Rhea Ripley main evented a pay-per-view. I don't think AEW's ever had a women's match main event a pay-per-view. They did main event the last episode of Rampage, which aired after Dynamite. Becky Lynch and Nia Jax had a fantastic last woman standing match. The street fight was really good too over on Rampage, but it's Rampage. The real main event of that 3-hour block was Edge versus Adam Copeland. So that, again, is kind of subjective, right? Like, you could say, yeah, but, right? That means subjective. I'm not dealing with facts right now. I'm just dealing with what I see on the TV. And what I see on the TV is more thought and effort is put into the women's division in WWE than in AEW. But if you just like AEW and you're like, hey, this is the same, well, then cool. That's good. That's awesome. That's great for you. And hopefully they continue to feature. And I hope that the arrival of Mercedes Moné does more for the women in AEW so that this argument really can't be made. I feel like this is one of those arguments that people will say, they'll be like, hey, you know what? AEW gets a lot of hate. Totally true. I agree. I think there's way too much AEW hate out there. I think as soon as they stumbled a little bit and WWE came up on the rise, people were really, really anxious to pounce on AEW. I think that's true. I also think AEW's had an issue featuring their women historically since their inception. I do. I think that, for the longest time, how many episodes of Dynamite and Collision were there where there was literally only one women's match per show? It was only very recently that Collision started featuring 2 women's matches per show. And I don't even know they did that last week now that I think about it. Raw and SmackDown, it's an anomaly if you don't get more than one women's match or segment, more than one women's match per episode. SmackDown, it's 2 hours. So sometimes, and especially these days with these really lengthy Rock Bloodline segments, that might have been bumped. Although, again, I don't have the stats in front of me, but it's a bizarre situation if Raw goes by with only one women's match. That is just an anomaly. It's the norm in AEW. So that, to me, says that I disagree with this hot take. I don't think that all things are the same. I think that maybe Strange Will here just probably enjoys AEW more than WWE, and that's totally fine. You should be allowed to do that. Go ahead and do that. I just personally disagree with this take. So there we go. Ooh, I like this one. Up Slingshot says, the 2016 era New Japan professional wrestling will forever be their attitude era. Just like no matter how good WWE gets, people will still say Stone Cold is better. No matter how much New Japan gets, people will always say Okada was better. It's hard to disagree with this one. 2016, but really 2017, Wrestle Kingdom, I think, sort of opened the door, so to speak, for a lot of people here on this side of planet Earth to start watching New Japan Pro Wrestling. Kenny Omega versus Kazuchika Okada somehow, some way through the ether just bubbled up, and everybody was talking about it. Everybody's like, oh man, this is going to be the match. And then they put on that match at Wrestle Kingdom 2017, and everybody started paying attention. Everybody started paying attention to the Bullet Club stuff because it was sort of peak at that moment. So yeah, and they're sort of, they've always been, ever since then, they've always been chasing that. I think before AEW started, they thought they had a big shot at coming over here to this side of the world and making a big splash. And then when AEW happened, it was like, oh shit, well, we'll do New Japan Strong because we don't have like the big draw of what was going to be our westward expansion with the Bullet Club and the Elite because they went somewhere else. So yeah, but up until that moment in like 2019, those 2 years, 2017 and 2018, oh my God, New Japan was on another level right there. It was crazy, and I think they've always been chasing that. And yeah, Okada, good luck finding another one of that guy. The Raven 361 says, do you see a draft happening after Mania, and who would you like to see switch shows and titles to each show? I hate to do this, but this is a great idea for a video itself. So the Raven 361, I'm probably going to do an actual video where I take a look at the landscape of WWE right now and decide who's going to change brands. So just hold your horses on that one. Multi-Class Geek says Steven Larson should come over to the UK for All In Weekend. So that sounds like a great idea. There's no way, I'm just keeping it real right now. There's no way the wife would let me come to England without bringing her. If I bring her, I got to bring Alabama. And if we do that, that just ups the expense exponentially. And on top of that, I fucking hate stadium shows. Last stadium show I went to was WrestleMania 33. It was one of the most miserable experiences of my whole entire life. So probably not going to do All In weekend, although I could write it off. I could write it off, which is really nice. But yeah, that's probably not going to happen. All In, it drops at like noon our time, California time. So I'm cool with that. I like the noon pay-per-views, man. Those are awesome. So I'm looking forward to All In, man. It should be a really good show. Diehard Homer, I swear I addressed this one before, but I'll do it again. If you don't cash in your Money in the Bank after 6 months, you should have to defend it like a title. I agree with that. I think it's a great idea. Gustavo Clarindo says, Hit Row is a better fit for Swerve than Mogul Embassy. Swerve getting over in that random-ass faction is a testament to how good he is. Here's my hot take. Swerve has never been in a good faction. The thing about Hit Row is that I think that they had the ingredients for something amazing there, but they needed to get past that first push of, okay, so we're musicians, we're rappers. How does that relate to the wrestling? I think if you figured out how to blend those things, then great. But like, are you rappers or are you wrestlers? Like, you got to pick one. You can't do both. Which are you going to do? And if you're going to do them both, you got to find a way to seamlessly blend into each other. But just coming out and doing some ciphers or raps or whatever, doing songs, for promos, unless you're going to be John Cena and just be completely vulgar with it, I don't know that it works. I just don't know that it works. But maybe they would have figured it out. I like all the pieces there. B-Fab, Ashanti Adonis, and Top Dollar. I liked them. I was hoping for big things with those guys. But like, it just seemed a little undercooked. Like they couldn't quite figure out how do we merge these two worlds properly. And then before they were able to figure it out, the big releases happened. But I'm also not a fan of Mogul Embassy. I like Prince Nana. I think he's great. But like the other dudes, like, I don't know. I don't really see, there was nothing really organic with these dudes coming together. It was just like Brian Cage in the Mogul Embassy. What's that all about? All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Hot Takes. Thanks everybody for turning yours in like it's homework. Till next time, we'll see you around. Oh, hit that like button, hit the thumbs up and all that kind of stuff.